Hey guys, Stockaholics, thanks for being here today. I made a video talking about why I think the US could be heading into a recession. I don't think that that is a guaranteed outcome, but I think that where we are today, it is a high probability. I've seen some ideas circulating out there where there's a concept that suggests that if we do head into a recession, that home sales are actually going to decrease out there as unemployment increases. And if you think about that rationally, I think logically, that would make sense. But I'm going to make a video that suggests that when we go into a recession, I think that the opposite outcome is going to occur. As unemployment increases in the US economy, we're actually going to see increasing amounts of home sales. And in this video, I wanted to talk about why I think that's going to be the case. Now, quickly, what am I talking about in a recession? What is that? Well, I'm not simply talking about a change in GDP. Something that all recessions have in common is that more people get unemployed than there were before a recession, right? So there's a change that takes place during a period of time in which there's an accelerating amount of unemployed people out there. And logically, I think a lot of people would say, okay, because there's more unemployed people out there, that means that there's less available buyers, right? There's things that are going on in the economy where you can't, how could their home sales possibly go up? Now, that did happen in this recession over here, in the great financial crisis, right? But there were different things happening right before that. Remember, this was a housing bubble, right? We're not in a housing bubble today. And to quickly show you guys what I'm talking about, this is a chart of United States existing home sales and unemployment rate, right? And in 2020, we saw over here, like you can see in this chart, one of the biggest spikes in unemployment rates that we've ever seen. And right after that, within a few months, right after lockdown started taking place, the other variable we're measuring here is existing home sales. And the home sales went from an average of 5 million or so to an average of 6 million within months. So as people were getting unemployed, more and more home sales were taking place. And again, this is counterintuitive to people, but I'm going to be continuing to show you why that's the case. And if we go into a recession, why that'll continue to be the case once again. Okay, on my screen, we have the federal funds effective rate. The Federal Reserve has control over short-term yields. However, those short-term yields do have impacts on longer-term yields, which also have impacts on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage out there, okay? Now, what we're looking at on my screen is a chart of these rates going back to the 1950s. One thing you can notice is that every time we go right before a recession, these interest rates spike. And the reason this is happening is because Federal Reserve is increasing rates. They deem that the economy is getting too hot and inflation rates are too high. And so they're trying to increase interest rates to kind of slow things down, okay? What you can see is that tends to lead to recessions, into these gray bars over here, okay? And when that happens, what does the Federal Reserve do? Well, they drop these rates. They go from being restrictive in the economy to accommodative, stimulative, right? And so how do they do that? They lower interest rates. These affect the cyclical parts of the economy the most. And one of the most cyclical parts, again, is your housing, right? So when they're raising interest rates, if you think it has an impact on 30-year fixed rate mortgage rates out there, it is dampening, right? But as you get into a recession, as those unemployment rates increase, right, what do? They lower interest rates. And so that has a stimulative impact because it makes houses cheaper and affordable when you're using debt to buy that house. Okay, so again, I think a lot of people think because unemployment rate increases in a recession, that leaves less potential buyers available to purchase homes, okay? The reason why this really isn't the case is because unemployment does not affect people from all socioeconomic categories the same way, okay? And this is a chart of people with increasing levels of education and the unemployment rate in 2023. Now, was 2023 a recession? No, okay? And if we do go into a recession in 2024, 2025, whenever, if we do, the unemployment rate will go up, but it will not affect people in all these categories of education the same. The people who are most impacted by recessions are people with lower incomes. As unemployment rate increases, it will impact the people who have less than a high school diploma, or some college and no degree the most, okay? And so when we're thinking about, okay, well, who are the kinds of people who have the kinds of incomes to purchase houses in the first place? Well, it isn't these people generally in these categories because they tend to make the least amount of money anyway. Now, will unemployment rate in these categories increase? Yes, it probably will, right? But when we think about it in terms of affordability, right? It's not, these unemployment rates don't really have a tremendous impact, right? If you're increasing affordability for the people who can buy it, that doesn't, it doesn't have a direct impact, right? Now, the other part of it is that, what was the other part? Okay, I remember what the other part was, right? When we're thinking about unemployment rate, right? Remember, during COVID, one of the most, we've had the highest unemployment rates ever in terms of a short-term time frame. We went to 12% unemployment, right? Now think about that for a second, right? If there's 12% unemployed, what percentage of people does that leave left? That leaves, 88% of people out there, right? So when we're talking about the United States, okay, well, you're talking about a small subset. In that subset, the people who are most impacted are people who can't afford houses anyway, right? So what does that leave you in terms of potential buyers? It leaves you a lot, right? We're not talking as if, I don't know, what is a country that has, high levels of unemployment out there? It's not South Africa, right? So when we're talking about unemployment, for us to see a huge drop in potential buyers out there, you'd have to be talking about like 30, 40% unemployment rate. And we're talking about the United States, that's just not going to happen. That doesn't exist, right? So even if this unemployment rate goes up out there, that still leaves most of your buyers out there available to buy. And so when we're talking about housing affordability, where we are today is, again, at some of the lowest levels we've ever seen in the United States. And when we're talking about home sales, we're at some of the lowest levels ever seen in the United States, right? So when we go into a recession, what is the Federal, if we do, what is the Federal Reserve going to do like they've done in every single recession before? They're going to lower rates, okay? And what is that going to do to interest rates on 30-year yields? Ultimately, it's going to lower rates and it's going to cause housing to go and become more affordable, right? And so if we're at some of the most unaffordable levels ever, and some of the at least in terms of rate of change, some of the highest interest rates, right, what we've ever seen, it doesn't take much to stimulate sales, right? It's not like we're going to go into a recession and things can get worse, right? They're already bad. They're already at some of the worst levels we can see, right? So it's not like we're talking about it as if we're in like 2005, 2006. We're going to get into a recession and those sales are going to get lowered. No, we're already in the recession in terms of home sales. We've been in the recession for 2 or 3 years now, right? So it's the Federal Reserve has been putting their boot on the throat of this market, right? And so as unemployment rate increases and those what's going to happen, those sales will increase. Okay, so when I talk about a recession coming, and if it does come, when I made this video, I think again it's counterintuitive, but I think the probability that if we go into a recession, that home sales increase is like nearly 100%, right? I don't feel like I'm talking about this as if it's a speculative thing. To quickly summarize, right? Home sales are already terrible, okay? They're at the all-time lows, right? And the reason for that is housing affordability. And what is the biggest contributor to housing unaffordability? It's interest rates, right? And then what does the Federal Reserve always do during a recession? Well, they try to stimulate the economy. And the way they do that is by lowering rates, right? So, and again, the unemployment that we see in recessions does not affect all people equally. It affects the poorest people who can't afford to buy a house anyway the most. Okay, so hopefully I kind of made my point clear in this. I kind of wanted to clarify because I think this is a confusing topic to a lot of people out there. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you have questions or you think I missed something or you want to add some comments, let me know below. I read all the comments. But thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. See you guys soon.